The sky was beginning to brighten when João adjusted the straw hat on his head and took one last look at his small property. The freshly plowed land reflected years of sweat and dedication. The cows grazed peacefully, but João knew he needed something more to improve his herd and secure a better future for his family. That was when he heard about Leroy, the breeding bull that everyone said was a life-changing investment for any farmer. It was his chance. João had saved every penny, sacrificed comforts, and even sold part of his land to gather the necessary funds. Yet, as much as he carried hope in his heart, he knew the auction would be a hostile environment. Wealthy and powerful individuals would be there, and João, with his simple clothes and modest demeanor, would be an easy target for disdainful looks. Still, João decided to go. He didn't want luxury or fame, just fairness, a chance to improve his family's life. Little did he know that day would not only be about buying a bull, but also about facing humiliation and proving that a man's worth isn't measured by his appearance, but by the greatness of his actions. The sun rose timidly on the horizon, painting the hills golden and announcing another day of hard work. João's small property seemed to breathe with the land, surrounded by rustic fences and trees swaying to the rhythm of the gentle wind. The farmer, wearing a worn straw hat and clothes soaked with the sweat of countless workdays, adjusted the saddle on his horse. His gaze lingered momentarily on his small herd, skinny cows struggling to graze on the dry pasture. It wasn't much, but it was all he had and all he needed to dream. That day, however, felt different. The air carried a unique tension, a weight João felt with every beat of his heart. He was preparing for a moment that could change his family's destiny forever. Leroy, the renowned breeding bull, was up for sale at the most anticipated auction in the region. João knew this was his chance to transform his modest farm into a source of prosperity. Reaching this point hadn't been easy. For years, João had saved every cent with near-cruel discipline. He had sold part of the land inherited from his father, let go of small joys, and endured the quiet criticism of even his neighbors. Now, with his hard-earned money in his pocket, he was heading to the auction. Despite the glimmer of hope, he couldn't shake off a shadow of insecurity. He knew the event wasn't a place for a simple man like him. The other participants, wealthy and influential landowners, would not only look down on him, but make sure to remind him he didn't belong in their world of luxury and ostentation. Even so, João wouldn't let wounded pride stop him. For his family, he would face any humiliation. That day, he would bet everything, not just his money, but also his courage, dignity, and the future he dreamed of. When João arrived at the auction, he felt the weight of the stairs turning toward him like invisible blades. The venue was luxurious by rural standards, with prominent landowners and their families dressed impeccably. Their boots gleamed like mirrors, and their wide-brimmed hats looked as though they had just come out of a store window. In stark contrast, João wore his best, a patched-up shirt and pants worn down by years of hard labor. Yet he held his head high, even as muffled laughter and whispers quickly evolved into outright jeers. "Look who's here! The backyard farmer thinks he can play with the big boys," Arnaldo sneered. He was one of the region's largest landowners, known for both his fortune and arrogance. "Bet he doesn't even have enough money for coffee," another man mocked, drawing laughter from the group around him. João felt his face burn, but kept his composure. He hadn't come to argue or let himself be shaken. He sat on a discreet bench at the back of the room, gripping his hat tightly in his hands. His eyes followed every movement as the first animals were auctioned. When the auctioneer announced Leroy, the star of the event, a murmur of anticipation rippled through the room. Leroy was truly impressive, muscular, majestic, with a glossy coat that reflected the care he received. His lineage was legendary, promising to multiply the profits of any farm. The bids started high and rose quickly as the wealthier farmers enthusiastically competed. João waited, his heart racing, calculating the right moment to act. Then, with courage, he raised his hand and placed his first bid. The silence that followed was almost tangible. All eyes turned to him, some in disbelief, others in amusement, until laughter erupted throughout the room. "This has to be a joke! He thinks he can buy Leroy?" Arnaldo exclaimed, laughing loudly to ensure everyone heard him. With a disdainful smirk, Arnaldo raised the bid, clearly trying to intimidate João. But João didn't back down. He took a deep breath, felt the sweat trickle down his temples, and increased the offer. The room filled with murmurs as João continued to bid, defying expectations. The competition narrowed to just João and Arnaldo, making them the center of attention. Increasingly irritated, Arnaldo placed an exorbitant bid, confident João would finally give up. But João didn't hesitate. He raised his hand again and announced his final bid with a firmness that silenced even the laughter. The auctioneer's gavel struck, confirming that Leroy was his. For a moment, the room was utterly silent before filling with murmurs of disbelief. João could hardly believe what had just happened. He, the man so many had dismissed, had won the bid. Leroy was now his, a symbol of hope for a better future. João walked to the payment desk with steady steps, though his heart was pounding. The incredulous stares of the crowd followed him like spotlights. Ignoring the whispers, he pulled a carefully folded check from his pocket. It represented years of hard work, sacrifices, and sleepless nights planning for this moment. Without hesitation, he handed it over, paying the full amount in cash. No debts, just sweat, perseverance, and unshakable determination. As he led Leroy out of the venue, the room was divided between awkward silence and murmurs of astonishment. With every step, João felt the weight of his victory, not just over the auction, but over the prejudices he faced. He looked at Leroy, who walked proudly by his side, as if aware of his pivotal role in this chapter of João's story. With dignity, João headed home, knowing this was only the beginning of a new journey. The following days were intense. João worked from dawn to dusk, dedicating himself even more to his property. Leroy proved to be much more than a symbol of triumph. He was an investment that began transforming João's herd. The once skinny cows now produced healthy, vigorous calves, drawing attention from other farmers. In just a few months, the small farmer, once the target of ridicule, became recognized as a top breeder in the region. The change was so impactful that João received an unexpected invitation to speak at an agricultural event. At first, he hesitated but eventually accepted, knowing his story could inspire others. On the day of the event, João felt a wave of nervousness as he noticed familiar faces in the audience, many of them the same people who had laughed at him during the auction. Among them was Arnaldo, whose expression was unreadable. João took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice was steady, carrying the humility that had always defined him. He shared his struggles, the prejudice he faced as a simple man, and the nights he had considered giving up. But he also spoke of determination, faith in his dreams, and hard work, qualities that had transformed his life. The true wealth, João said, looking directly at the audience, is not in what we wear or own. It's in the courage to fight for our dreams and the strength to never give up, even when everything seems against us. Never judge a man by his appearance. You don't know the weight of the battles he carries. João's words resonated throughout the room. For a moment, there was absolute silence before the audience rose to their feet, applauding him. The sound was deafening, but what struck João most was Arnaldo's gesture. The once arrogant farmer was the first to stand and, with tear-filled eyes, publicly apologized. That moment marked a definitive turning point. João was no longer seen as just a humble farmer, but as a symbol of determination, courage, and greatness. His story had not only changed his life, but also planted a seed of respect and inspiration in the hearts of everyone who heard it. João returned to his farm with a heart full of gratitude and the certainty that he had achieved something far greater than respect. He had reaffirmed the dignity he had always carried, even in silence, and shown the world the power of persistence and faith. Leroy, his loyal companion, continued to be the centerpiece of that transformation. With every new generation of healthy calves, João saw the reflection of hard work, difficult choices, and the courage to believe in himself when few did. Life on the farm took on a new rhythm. It wasn't just about tending to the herd or expanding the business. It was about the story João had built with sweat and resilience. At the end of his speech, as the audience continued to applaud, João made sure to thank them with a serene smile and a voice filled with emotion. Looking at the crowd, he said, "I thank each of you for being here today, not just for listening to me, but for giving me the chance to share my story. If I can leave you with one thing, Let it be the certainty that dreams have no limits and no obstacle is too great for those with the courage to fight. Each of you has your own battles, your own stories. Never forget that what defines us is not what we have, but who we are and what we do with the opportunities life gives us. João's words echoed like a beacon of hope and inspiration. The audience applauded once more, many with tears in their eyes. Arnaldo, who had previously apologized, approached João at the event's conclusion to personally thank him for his words. That day, João not only solidified his position as a successful farmer, but also as a source of learning and motivation for those around him. He returned home with Leroy by his side, not just the bull that transformed his farm, but a symbol of the power of courage, honest work, and perseverance. As the sun set over the hills surrounding his farm, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold, João looked at his property and felt at peace. He knew his story wasn't just about victories, it was about the power of believing, even when everyone else doubts, and the beauty of staying true to oneself in any circumstance.